So in your opinion, what's the funnier Steven Spielberg movie? This, Schindler's List.
Oh my God. Well, I'm going to give it to this.
Yeah. Is it closer than you would expect?
Yeah, I think anybody, if you pose that to them without them having seen this, would think it was a massive difference, but it really is not.
It's surprisingly tight race.
I mean, anytime you try to make war a comedy, I think you're going to struggle at times. That being said, MASH was incredibly successful.
Stripes with Bill Murray?
Yeah, this did not do it, though. Whatever tone they struck here or how they tried to do it, whew.
I think the problem is when you try and mix comedy with Steven Spielberg. That's when you get into trouble. That's maybe just my opinion. I don't know. Welcome to Bad Movies and Beer. I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And today we are discussing a monumental failure in the career of acclaimed director Steven Spielberg, 1941.
Yeah. I didn't know of this movie before you shared it with me. Is this something that he has secretly, put under the rug? Like he's just swept it under the rug pretty quietly, or
I think society swept it under the rug pretty quietly. The movie-going public did not really show up for this one. No, he's pretty open about I think he was coming off of Jaws and Close Encounters, and at the time, like John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd were very hot coming off of the first few years of Saturday Night Live, and they met him somehow, and he, I think, just wanted to try his hand at this comedy because when he saw a script, it really lent itself to these big scenes of spectacle, and he's got a quote about how excited he was to break some furniture or something, and there's a lot of shit gets broken in this. So
that's funny that you say that, because that is kind of what this felt like to me, right? It didn't seem like it was a well-written comedy film. It seemed like it was an excuse for Spielberg to have massive scenes of destruction. It felt almost like he was testing stuff out for Indiana Jones. There's a lot of those camera shots of a whole bunch of people getting affected by action around them, and that felt very much like some of the stuff that I remember from the Indiana Jones films.
I mean, I could see it for sure. Certainly, again, big set pieces. This has kind of like a madcap, very slapstick comedy. It's an old-fashioned kind of vibe, which maybe that's why I didn't find it that funny, is because all of these sort of things are things I've seen before.
Yeah, it felt like it was stuck in time. It's a film about 1941, made in the end of the 1970s.
Yeah, I think it was released 1980, so probably filmed in 79.
But it definitely feels like the comedy they're going for is something that people in the 40s and 50s would have laughed at.
Yeah. Although I was going to say it's kind of clean, but there is a little bit of
There's a lot of sexual innuendo that transfers through this, so it feels like they were trying to meld that, which seems like a very 80s comedy sensibility, with the 40s slapstick, action, physical comedy stuff, and it didn't hold together for me. I know we're just at the start of this. We're ruining our ratings before, but this is going to be an active shitting on a Steven Spielberg film.
Yeah, for sure. No, whatever the mix is, it does not mix well. But hopefully the beer that we have chosen to pair this up with today will mix. Although, as I'm looking at this, it is a British beer, which we're talking about America and American soldiers. Maybe that part doesn't really connect. But what are we drinking today?
They were allies during the war. This is called Eagle Bombardier. It is a premium British ale. So this is something that we picked up in the LCBO, our local beer distributor here in Ontario.
Pretty widely available, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can get this everywhere. It's got the finest of British ingredients here. The connection with our movie is we have a war. This is 1941. This is the start of America getting involved in the Second World War. And the main character, one of them is Belushi, and he is a fighter pilot. And the people who helped in the war to drop bombs from these planes were called bombardiers. So this is sort of the connection we're making. It's a pretty easy connection.
You know what else is a huge bomb? This movie. So there's that.
There are so many explosions in this and so many bombs that are dropped. You're right. This fits pretty well because this is a piece of shit movie and hopefully a really delicious beer. Do you want to get into it?
Absolutely. I like a British ale.
Oh, yeah. I think this should be fairly malty, fairly crushable, something that not too bitter, right? Leaves a sort of caramely malty. Yeah, I'm looking forward to drinking this.
Much easier to drink than that fucking Imperial Stout from Hard Rock Zombies 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I don't know if I'm too old for these double stouts, these
rye barrel aged
stouts, but Tastes delicious. Just putting down a whole one is a lot of work.
Tastes delicious if you say so. I'm more excited for this. Let's crack it open.
Ooh, it's dark. It is kind of what I pictured. British.
So after the Universal Studios logo, we get the title card, followed by a crawl that tells us that Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, the event which launched America into World War II, paranoia gripped the West Coast as panic-stricken citizens were convinced that California was the next target of the Imperial Japanese forces. And so, for the first time since the Civil War, American citizens prepared to defend their homeland against an enemy whose first assault was expected anywhere, at any time, and in any force. Which leads us to what is maybe the only good scene in this movie.
Oh, this movie does start off on a bit of a hot note here.
Yeah.
We've got a crawl, which, you gotta love. Spielberg enjoys his crawls in his movie. So we got one going on here letting us know. I always remember that December 7th is the date of Pearl Harbor because it's my wife's birthday.
Oh.
Yeah, so I always have that connection of something sudden happening and fucking up your life, just like, yeah.
Come on.
Oh, no, I love my wife. But,
of course.
So just like you said, we start out hot. We have the scroll, and then we have an old-timey car. They're setting the time tone really well with that car, and we have a lady get out, and she's wearing this robe that says Polar Bear Club. And we know, she's about to go for a swim in the ocean. She heads out there and drops her robe, and I'm surprised to see that she is buck naked.
Oh, very much so, yes.
This is a real polar bear club. No bathing suits for her. She swims out there, and then we transition into the start of Jaws.
Yeah, it's a very familiar sound. We get that kind of ominous Jaws music. And from there, we get just a terrific bit of parody. The bubbles below the surface show up and they get bigger and bigger until finally this lady is lifted out of the water not by a shark, but by a Japanese submarine. The ship's crew quickly emerges from a hatch, including its commander, played by legendary Japanese actor Toshiro Mifune, alongside a high-ranking Nazi played by horror icon Christopher Lee, and they begin arguing about where and when to attack the Americans. The Japanese commander has made up his mind. The target? Hollywood, a place that, if destroyed, would demoralize the Americans' will to fight. There's just one problem, though. According to the Nazi passenger, this ship's crew is lackluster at best. In fact, he doubts they'll even be able to find Hollywood, let alone destroy it. Man, that one Japanese ensign really shows him, huh?
Oh, this whole scene is quite a bit. As she's raising out of the water, she's screaming, but yet it sort of turns into a bit of a pole dance as she wraps her legs around the periscope of the submarine and spins around. We get these very early stereotypical Japanese and German portrayals here of people in military time, not written with a bunch of complexity.
No,
great actors
no.
who are portraying these people, but not a lot of material to work with. I did think it was funny that they were arguing whether there was anything worthy of destroying on the west coast of America, and they came to the idea of Hollywood. I kind of liked this section. I like that they're setting this up as going to be a battle there, and I wondered if we were going to actually see the actors as themselves, but then getting into military garb
like
and fighting.
Fourth wall kind of breaking.
Yeah, I wondered if that was where it was going at this point in the movie. But
the ensign spots Hollywood, right?
Yeah, he spots Hollywood as he's heading down back into the submarine. He looks up and gets a real good shot of this naked lady's ass.
Yeah.
And he screams Hollywood, and as his penis is rising above the waistline or the belt line of his pants, the sub starts to sink below the water.
Yeah, no, the submarine's going in an opposite direction, and this guy is so transfixed on this lady's nether regions that he's not even clothed in the hatch. Water starts pouring in for not the last time in this movie. They gotta drag this guy in and close it. But no, they drag him down there, and having just managed to get the hatch closed before the sub filled with water, we cut to a couple of young guys working in a diner and also working on their dance moves. These guys are tossing dishes back and forth while practicing steps, and eventually one of them, Wally is his name, sachets his way out to a table where some members of the military are holding court. Well, Dan Aykroyd is holding court. He's playing the role of Sergeant Frank Tree, and his various subordinates include John Candy, Mickey Rourke, and a young Treat Williams, who is not a fan of Wally's dancing. Why aren't you in uniform, he asks him, and when Wally tells him he doesn't like taking orders, we get a slapsticky dust-up. This whole scene has a ton of slapstick elements to it, mostly involving food ending up in other people's faces. But other than the part where Wally's friend throws him a turkey leg to defend himself, I didn't find much of it funny.
It really wasn't. The kind of buddy comedy feeling here and then the slapstick fighting feels very much inspired by like Three Stooges-esque. It's like that level. And don't get me wrong, I love a good Three Stooges, but I was not prepared for that here.
Not what you were expecting.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't at all what I was expecting. And the two guys that are in there kind of feel like the two goofy guys you'd have in an 80s movie, but
Yes. Yeah, a good precursor to the guys we'd see in like Night of the Creeps or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I was kind of referencing back to some of the movies we'd seen too, and I think they would have been okay, or it would have been funnier if they didn't push some stuff just past believability. Like when they're getting slapsticky, they're literally like pouring coffee everywhere. They're throwing things in giant things of water. They're smashing stuff for no reason.
Guy's face gets mashed into a whole birthday cake.
Yeah,
And
and
why is that in front of him in a diner? I don't know.
yeah, there's just a bunch of stuff where they're pushing it to a point that it's not funny. Like it would have been better if they had pulled back a little bit here and been a little more subtle. And I don't know. I guess maybe that was the problem I had with most of the comedy in this movie. It lacks complete zero subtlety.
Yeah,
anyway.
no one's pulling back. This is Steven Spielberg full speed ahead. There is a nice line at the end, though, after Dan Aykroyd calms everyone down.
You okay, kid? You're not gonna tip my massage? Oh, it's okay. I don't need your tip. I think you do. Get rid of that shirt. It's in bad taste.
That's kind of funny. I don't know.
I'm insulted as a Hawaiian shirt wearing person.
You have some Hawaiian shirts, yeah. No, Wally is in rough shape here, especially after his boss tells him he's got to stay late and clean up. But tonight's the big jitterbug contest. But first, we get some John Belushi hijinks. What do you think of Captain Wild Bill Kelso, Noel?
Holy fuck, this character sucks.
Speaking of no subtlety.
Oh, awful. And I know John Belushi is known for going over the top and for very physical comedy. And we do get a couple moments where he does that and it's funny. But for the most part, the portrayal of the like out of control Air Force pilot, Wild Bill, whatever. Kelso was just terrible. And it really sets the tone here where we see him struggling to land his plane on a highway. He pulls up to a gas station and asks them to fill up the tank of his plane, and then goes in and pulls a gun on the guy who's working there.
Yes, that happens. He pulls a gun a couple of times. He starts like grabbing soup cans and stuffing them under his jacket, and I don't know. It's the kind of Belushi food thing.
Is that a running joke?
Well, I mean, like if Animal House, his whole thing was like he's this gluttonous kind of party machine, and in this, I think they're
channeling that and making it, but yeah, it didn't channel that for me very well.
No.
I don't know. I have seen stuff with Belushi that I thought was funny, but here in this character, and I don't know if it is the wartime tones that they're trying to get or where they are, but it's not working.
Again, I think not a lot to work with. That'll be a theme I go back to at different points here. It's kind of just him trying to do funny things with the limited resources
Do you think
available.
they wrote him anything, or they would just like be a ridiculous pilot?
So apparently the part was much smaller before he signed on to do it, and then they expanded the part, but I don't know if that means they expanded the script.
Okay.
Or if it was like John Belushi enters and does stuff.
He'll fill this in, and it'll be gold.
Well, he fills it in. His propeller or something, the plane detaches from the fuel hose and it's like rolling away on its own. He comes out and fires his gun in the air and he's like, "Stop that plane." That was kind of funny. I'm reaching here. I'm reaching for, I don't know.
Struggling. I thought this whole section was rough. This is the first of many times, though, that Spielberg gets a hard-on for explosions.
Yeah.
So the plane's rolling away, and of course, somehow Belushi lights the gas on fire, and it goes back and blows up the gas station, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Again, get used to it, though, because there's a lot happening. I'll be honest, so far, the military personnel on both sides of this fight are not exactly inspiring confidence. So it's nice when Robert Stack arrives in our next scene, playing the extremely serious General Joseph W. Stilwell. Unfortunately, he's traveling with his new secretary, Donna Stratton, who, as a young captain played by Tim Matheson from Animal House tells us, is super horny for planes. Here's how he explains it.
No man has ever gotten to first base with her on the ground. But get her into a plane, she'll bat your balls right out of the park.
You can fly, sir?
And right on cue, we see her basically eye-fucking the shit out of a B-17 bomber. If only that's where this scene ended, huh?
Oh my God, it's true. And I don't know what it is. Is it the shape of airplanes that gets her going?
Because the front part's a little bit penisy.
Planes are very much shaped like cocks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So maybe that is it. But apparently she only gets inside a fuselage is sort of what they're implying here. And this section of innuendo is kind of rough. I will say...
It was an innuendo. He takes her into the cockpit. There's no innuendo.
That's true. It's not even that much innuendo. They're straight up... This is where the comedy's strange, right? We've got a whole bunch of slapstick stuff so far, and then we've got this weird relationship between these two where it's all about him trying to get her to have sex with him. A lot of the behavior in this is kind of sexually predatory.
Well, we'll get into young Treat Williams later
Holy
on.
fuck.
Gets a little aggressive.
But this is not too far from that either, right? Like, he is pushing one agenda, and...
Yeah, but she kind of pushes back and is like, unless you're a real pilot, like, don't bother. But he gets her in the plane, and then she's like a willing participant as he pretends that they're taking off.
Until she can't climax, and they drop a bomb out of the plane, and it explodes a podium. Where
We haven't gotten to that part yet.
Yeah.
Although it does happen very soon. I thought she kind of looked like a rich man's Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Oh. I don't think that their face looks very similar, but
Really?
I think that they have a very similar stature. There's something about Maggie Gyllenhaal's face that's off to me.
Well, that's why I said a rich man's Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Where this woman does not have that
she's got-
appearance.
I think you could squint and see Maggie Gyllenhaal, or vice versa.
All
But
right.
you
Is
know.
this a slight on Maggie Gyllenhaal?
You're
or
the
on
one
the
who
sex
just said
scene?
you don't like her face. It's not on me. A slight on Maggie
I
Gyllenhaal.
didn't say I didn't like
Anyway,
her face.
well,
I just think
not how it sounded to me.
No, I think she just
We'll let the
doesn't
listeners
look
decide.
Hollywood. Like, I like that she's successful because I don't think she comes off as
Yeah, she's
like
plain. She's an uggo, and that's why you're happy that she's made it in Hollywood. Good for you. You love inclusion. You love inclusiveness. That's
This
on the
is right.
record.
This is
Yeah.
what I want.
Anyway, as you mentioned a second ago, Tim Matheson's attempts to get laid in the cockpit of a plane on the runway go predictably awry. First, when a crew of mechanics get batted around by Donna's various opening and closing of flaps and whatnot, and then when she literally opens the bomb bay doors instead of just spreading her legs like Matheson was hinting at. Once the fantasy roleplay and metaphor are shattered, Donna practically shatters his jaw with a right cross and sends him stumbling backwards and right into the bomb release lever, which causes a bomb to hit the ground and roll into a bandstand, where it explodes right as Robert Stack is assuring the crowd that no bombs will be dropped here. Now that's just bad timing.
Yeah. This is why we need a bombardier. You need someone on that plane who's in charge of ensuring it doesn't get dropped unless it's on target, right? And clearly, if they had a bombardier in the plane with them, they would have stopped that from happening. So we got our good connection with our beer. They're really pushing connections right here, and it's
For us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I do kind of like the timing of them promising that no bombs would be dropped on it, and then they kind of
you can see
explode
it coming. It's
But
rolling
this
behind him.
This is the second massive explosion that Spielberg's got to do here, and he is just getting raging explosion boners. Like, this is all it is. He just wants to destroy stuff on the back set, right?
That's what it is. Now, if you thought Robert Stack's luck was bad in that last scene, we see that poor Wally is having a really rough go. First, he finds out that he won't be able to attend the Jitterbug contest, not because he has to work, but because the club it's taking place at is for USO members only. Then his girlfriend Betty tells him that she's still attending as a hostess, which means she's going to be dancing with a whole bunch of servicemen. And then her crackpot father shows up with a shotgun, presumably to blow Wally's dick and balls off for sniffing around his daughter.
Oh my God. Here comes my father. And he's got a gun!
How could things possibly get any worse? Maybe getting blocked by Treat Williams, huh? What do you think?
Yeah, that would make it worse. This is also too much, right? The dad who is running around with the shotgun and other guns.
He's an unhinged maniac.
Yeah.
He's not tethered to reality at all. He's
No.
not a real guy.
Not even close to, right? He's got this like kind of hot wife for how old
Yeah.
and greasy he seems.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of these like younger boys running around being maniacs. And a hot like daughter who
For the time.
Yeah, for the time, right? Like
I mean, she's no Maggie Gyllenhaal, that's for sure.
that's true. But they're all going to be interested in her. What was interesting here is, so this is all going down, and then the military shows up to put a long gun on his property because they live on the coast.
It's a position of strategic advantage, is how Dan Aykroyd puts it.
Dan Aykroyd here is playing a very straight man. Like no
yeah.
comedy so far, right? Like he is
No.
playing the guy who...
Well, the tip line was comedy.
Yeah, I guess
But
that's the only
he's very pro-military, which Dan Aykroyd apparently is in real life.
So he's being a huge straight man here. He's like kind of fulfilling the role here, despite everyone else being kind of goofy in this movie so far.
He gets there. He gets there at the end.
We're going to talk about it when he hits his head, but but I guess that's what they're doing. They're setting him up. But so they're talking here about getting this gun there, and of course, what's the actor's name again?
Treat Williams.
Treat Williams shows up.
R.I.P.
This is the like really kind of tall. They call him Stretch, I think.
Well, he calls himself Stretch. I think that's an implication about it. That's what he tells Betty. This is the girl, Wally's girlfriend.
Says that he has
they
a
call him
big dick.
Stretch.
Yeah.
You go
I
figure.
thought it was because he was tall.
I mean, there's two ways of looking at it.
Yeah, you're saying tall men all have giant dongs.
I know one that does.
Yeah.
Shaquille O'Neal. No, I'm just kidding.
You've seen that movie too?
Yeah, man. No, but he's there, and he becomes enamored with Wally's girl.
With Wally's girl immediately, right? Yep. And Wally is hiding in a garage here. This whole thing is taking place
hiding from her crazy dad.
Yeah, and when Treat Williams here meets her, what's her character's name?
Betty.
When he meets Betty, he's in love, but too much so. He's already being possessive of her. She at first kind of is like, this is a handsome tall man, and then immediately realizes that he's coming on too strong. Wally falls out of the top of the garage here, and we get some bad comedy, and then of course Stretch is going to rough him up and get him out of there. They pick him up, take him out of this garage, and throw him in a garbage truck. And so the comedy continues. We also didn't mention that
the comedy continues.
We also didn't mention that they've added another character that is supposed to be funny but doesn't bring it. The like desperate friend of Betty.
She's a little heavier.
Yeah, the bigger. She reminds me of characters that Rosie O'Donnell would have played.
Oh, Rosie O'Donnell wouldn't be chasing around Treat Williams trying to get his cock though.
Not in real life.
Can you think of a Rosie O'Donnell character where she's like man crazy? Because I can't either.
Maybe not. I don't know. It is a character where a like less attractive, desperate
Maggie
kind
Gyllenhaal type, you're saying,
is chasing after the person who is interested in her
She likes
friend.
it. She likes Treat Williams. She sees the way he's projecting himself, and she's like, she literally says, "That's the man for me."
Yeah, but it's so desperate. Like, there's no depth to this character. She's literally chasing him, like running after him through the entire movie.
For the rest of the movie, yeah.
While he is trying to rape her friend. Like, that is the whole...
now.
We're going to get there.
So, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm not protesting what you're saying about Treat Williams. I'm protesting the fact that you're spoiling it this early. This is it's so much. This is all just so much is how I'm going to phrase this. But now it's time to check in on the Japanese submarine, whose crew is unfortunately living up to their reputation, despite apparently being the descendants of ninja assassins, according to the commander. I'm not sure how that qualifies them for a career at sea, but they do succeed at one thing, capturing some salty old lumberjack in the North California woods. And if you like shitty versions of old Abbott and Costello routines, then I've got great news for you, because this fucker's name is Hollis Wood. I'll let you fill in the rest of what happens here.
This is so bad.
It's really bad.
This guy is named Hollis Wood.
Yep.
He's driving around in a Christmas tree truck in California. We are around the holidays. This is December, obviously, so they're getting prepared for this. He's a lumberjack. They capture him, bring him to the sub, and we have a thing where they are asking him where Hollywood is, and we are getting
Hollis Wood.
A really bad who's
so
on
bad.
first. I'm here. I'm right here. Where Hollywood? Where's Hollywood?
You're looking at him. Yeah.
And it's so bad. They find on him a compass, which they want to use to find Hollywood. Their compass, they only have one of them on an entire submarine amongst all the military members.
But now he has one.
It gets broken. So he has one, but he decides to consume it so they can't use it. He is a patriotic American. He swallows that compass.
Well, but
yeah,
this scene culminates with the Japanese unleashing a secret weapon.
Cheers.
So this is it, Noel. The fate of the free world depends on this guy not shitting out that compass.
There's just an awful interrogation scene here. They force some prune juice down his throat. Of course, the German in the boat wants to just fucking murder him and cut it out. Right? The Japanese are above that, though, because of the stereotypes about them coming from ninjas, right?
Is that why? Is that how you interpreted that?
I don't know. It's just really, really bad. They get this guy down to his underwear and shirt. And we're going to transition out of this back to
God.
town in a minute, but we're going to come back to what's happening here on the sub in not too long.
Yeah, after a quick scene of two bozos getting on a Ferris wheel with guns to guard the Ocean Amusement Park in Santa Monica, three bozos if you count the one guy's ventriloquist dummy.
Oh my God.
We do come back to check in on Hollis Wood, who still hasn't shit out that compass, and the Nazi captain is losing patience. After assuring Christopher Lee and the Japanese commander that he could probably squeeze it out if he had a bit more privacy, they leave him alone in the submarine's bathroom and post some guards outside. But as we've already established, this ship is crewed by morons, and Hollis quickly outfoxes the dim-witted guards by pretending to take a shit, only to get the drop on them when they come in to check. And before you know it, Hollis has escaped the submarine, although he does find himself struggling to find land as the ship submerges. Right before the escape happens, the Japanese commander has a line. "This has not been honorable," he says. And I like to imagine that it wasn't a line in the script, just Toshiro Mifune talking about appearing in this movie. Like, this is when you realize, like, what have I done to my career?
It is, you're so right. This movie lacked direction. Nobody reined this in. And this,
which is so ironic, considering it's like one of the greatest directors of all time. Yeah.
Like, nobody was willing to tell Spielberg at this point that he needed to pull some of these characters and things back. Was there not a producer on this thing that was like, shit's coming off the rails here? We've got like these strange characters that are doing all kinds of crazy things, and none of it is coming together to make a cohesive story.
I think many successful people will tell you that once you reach a level of success, you lose people that are willing to say no to you. Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of it, so every idea is a great idea. But by all accounts, Spielberg himself was very nervous in the process of making this, thinking that he wasn't pulling this off and not knowing if it was funny. And it wasn't until like preview screenings where they were just like, oh, fuck.
Oh, so, but he will openly recognize that this was a giant turd.
But no, there was nobody being like, Steven, you got to pull this back, buddy.
Yeah, somebody needed to be there and set this thing back on in the rails because it fell way off, right? Like, this thing was a complete derailment.
Absolutely. You get no argument from me on that one. Hollywood Boulevard is our next stop. That's where the big USO Jitterbug contest is taking place and where General Stillwell is looking forward to taking in a Disney classic.
Dumbo. Sure be able to get my mind off things for a while.
Shortly before an urgent communication arrives, warning of possible trouble in Barstow, California. Tim Matheson takes us another opportunity to try to get Donna Stratton back into the cockpit, literally and figuratively. And just as soon as they leave, we see Betty arriving with Treat Williams, who drags her past a desperate Wally to enter the big dance. So tell me, Noel, is Wally going to just lay back and take it as his girlfriend lays back and takes it from Treat Williams? Or is he going to find a way into this dance?
You know, what the funniest turn for this movie was, the thing that I laughed at the most, is that this doofus character from the diner is transitioning into the hero of this story.
Didn't see it coming, eh?
I should have, right? And I kind of, it feels like a Spielberg thing to do. Of course he's not going to take this laying down. He's going to not let his girl Betty get taken advantage of by this terrible soldier, and he's not going to miss his chance to Jitterbug. Have you seen his footwork? This guy was like moving in the kitchen. That's what he was focused on the whole time.
Oh my God, he's, as it turns out, just the greatest jitterbug in the world. Jitterbugger, yeah. If I knew anybody else who was historically known for the jitterbug, I would tell them to eat a dick here because this guy clearly is it. But who the fuck knows? It's sort of a lost art, the jitterbug, I guess. But he's it. But he's got to get in first. How's he do it?
Yeah, he's got to get in. So he needs to figure out a way to pretend to be a serviceman, right? They're only letting people who are in the military into this club. So he bides his time. He's waiting outside until he sees a drunk guy getting dragged out by one of the military police, the MPs, right? And the military police guy drags the guy into an alley, and he's going to rough him up a little bit for being an embarrassment to the service. But this is where Wally takes advantage. He drops a giant shell, like a giant explosive, onto the head of this MP, knocks him out and steals his clothing. He also ties him up a little bit, and he sneaks his way into the club pretending to be military police.
Yeah, and it's good that he does because Betty has clearly become creeped out by Treat Williams at this point as she frantically tries to get away from him before the jitterbug contest even starts. And immediately after Wally enters the club and sweeps her away from him, we see that this contest is going to be a thinly veiled pretense for more slapstick comedy as the whole thing devolves into a giant brawl between the Army and Navy. It's like that annual football game, but with jazz and way less black guys.
They make comments about that even in this.
There's none in there.
No. They actually only have like one black service member in this whole thing.
One black character in this whole movie.
And they make racist jokes about that.
Well, okay. They use a word that's not commonly acceptable anymore. It's not the N-word, but it's the other N-word, which, was at the time an acceptable term, I think. But like, if you remove that word from it, is it still racist humor? Like, are you triggering because they use the word?
I'm referring to the scene where there is blackface and whiteface.
Those don't cancel each other out if you do both at the same time? No, I'm kidding. They definitely do not. But again, though, at that time,
it would have been seen, yeah. Well, which is why I think a lot of the criticism of this movie is that the comedy is super old and then the content of the comedy does not age well.
Nothing about this has aged well.
No.
But it's weird because they're looking at an older age already from when the movie was being filmed. It's real strange.
It's really, really strange. I will say, so this whole scene inside of the club where they're dancing has a lot of extras, a lot of people. There's
tons.
A radio host who's doing a live broadcast.
Played by Joe Flaherty, SCTV legend.
Doing a great job.
He is very good, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, everywhere I look, soldiers are fighting sailors, sailors are fighting Marines. Directly in front of me, I see a flying blonde floozy. Everywhere I look, everywhere, pure pandemonium.
This is what Steven Spielberg was enjoying, right? These moments of putting all of these people in here and making it very frenetic and making it so, like, absolutely, ridiculous. He's enjoying creating this scenario that we know is going to spill out to be something more. I think for the very first time in this movie, I laughed, though, in the scene here where Treat Williams tries to dance with Betty and just absolutely has nothing here. And it is hilarious. Like that moment of him being incompetent on there. And he's not okay with that, though. He's about to drag her off the dance floor and take her out of this club.
But that's what starts this giant brawl is like the dancing ends up spilling into the crowd a little bit. Guys get like accidentally knocked out and stuff. And it just devolves into soldiers and sailors just beating the fuck out of each other.
While you have a bit of a like Tom and Jerry scenario of Wally running around avoiding Tree's character the whole time, right?
They're ducking in and out of like these patches of this fight. But they end up both knocked out a little bit later, I guess. But as the fight rages on, we pop over to Barstow now, where Tim Matheson and Donna Stratton receive a very frosty welcome from the crackpot colonel who's stationed there and his men. This lunatic thinks Tim Matheson is actually a Japanese man wearing stilts and even has one of his members of his squad check for them by kicking him in the shins. But once they determine that he is in fact an American, the colonel lets him take Donna Stratton up in the only plane they have, one that unfortunately doesn't have a radio. Now the colonel promises to recall the nearest military base to let them know they're up there so the planes can get shot down. But there's a pretty good chance he's going to forget to do that when Captain Wild Bill Kelso makes an unscheduled landing to chew some scenery. Belushi just like you said, not holding back here.
Yeah, there's so much here. All of the characters are over a top. The
colonel is
is just out of control. The fact that we're still pulling this like I gotta get up in the plane to have sex joke is actually something that I think is commendable. It's gone too far, but they're not willing to let go of it yet. So they're gonna fly in this
gonna go further.
Super unsafe plane. Belushi lands his plane right after they take off, and he hops out, guns a-blazing. He punches someone in the face almost immediately and just goes off. And this is where I'm like, did anyone write anything for this guy? What is happening here? He's like pouring coffee and Coke all over himself.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
You hear Belushi and Coke and you think,
Well, he must have consumed a lot of that before this performance. It's my only assumption.
Yeah, it does seem like. You know what, though? I will say the coffee thing is one of the only parts of this I found funny. Like every time his character drinks something, he spits it out. So as they're going through here, he's like spraying coffee left and right into people's faces. But these guys just keep filling up his cup, God bless them. Like they're teeing him up, and he's
they've done that a lot. Like there was a lot of filling coffee cups in this. Like from the start in the diner through to this point, and even later in the movie, they're just like pouring carafes of coffee everywhere.
Yeah. But as he's like walking through, even like he's walking and a guy's running beside him, pouring coffee in his cup, and he's just sipping it and just like spitting it in someone's face. Everything he drinks, I don't know.
Everything he's drinking, he's spitting on it on people. He actually does take a really good pratfall here. He tries to climb up on the wing and just
biffs it.
Fucking eats it hard. And it didn't look like they cut out a stuntman or anything. Like it looked like Belushi just fucking took it.
Good editing. Or Belushi just fucking took it.
I'm not sure which one it was, but I actually thought that commitment to physical comedy was pretty good. The fucking Wild Bill character is too much, but it was that moment was the only one, I think, of his performance for me that gave me a bit of a laugh when he fucking ate it out of there. It seems like there's a massive criticism of the military here. Like everyone's so incompetent on all sides. I didn't know Steven Spielberg's like perspective on that, but it seemed like the writing was incredibly critical.
So it's funny you say that because apparently Spielberg's first choice for the role of General Stilwell, his first two choices were John Wayne and Charlton Heston. And he got as far as getting them a script, and they both thought it was like rampantly un-American and refused to do it.
And I can absolutely see that. I think that like everything that's happening here is a pretty big farce. To be fair to Spielberg in that moment, he also made the Japanese and the Germans seem ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not like they're doing much better, I was going to say.
They're all ridiculous in this, but basically what happens is when there is a fear of an invasion on American soil, everything falls to shit.
People lose their minds.
Yeah,
that's the premise. That's the premise of this movie. Yeah. But I'll tell you who does like the portrayal of Wild Bill Kelso. The fucking Colonel and his men. They are huge fans of his. He takes off with great fanfare and enthusiasm.
My God.
And from there, we cut to some action in a different plane as Tim Matheson has Donna Stratton right where he wants her. She is practically mounting him as they make their way across Riverside County, where they are spotted by a military base that definitely was not informed about their flight and quickly arms the anti-aircraft guns. No wonder Matheson's having a hard time performing.
What's wrong, Lewis? You're not airborne yet.
What are you talking about? Look out the window. Of course we're airborne.
We are, but you're not.
Man, this guy's been so committed to her love language. He has like stolen a plane, figured out how to get it in the air. And now that he's at the moment of having her soaking body all over him, he can't perform. He's feeling a little bit of I don't know what we'd call that, air sickness maybe. But
he's washing out.
He's washing out, Top Gun, but she's going to persist here. She thinks that she can get him going. And even though they're getting fired at by anti-aircraft guns, it seems to be putting her even further into that mood. This is a girl who likes to live dangerously.
Some women like danger, I was going to say, man. Yeah. Well, Tim Matheson may not be able to get it up right now, but if you're looking for something that'll get you up, how about a rousing speech from Dan Aykroyd? He rolls onto Hollywood Boulevard in his tank and not only manages to stop the massive brawl between the soldiers and the sailors, he also whips them into a pro-America frenzy. These guys are ready to stand their ground and defend the American way of life, and it looks like they're going to have to, as Toshiro Mifune's Japanese sub surfaces outside of Betty's dad's house. But the far greater threat, at least as far as all these military personnel in Hollywood are concerned, is the plane making an unauthorized flight overhead. They don't know that it's carrying Tim Matheson in his medium soft dick, and neither does Wild Bill Kelso, who is in hot pursuit. So get ready for 20-ish minutes of a middling dogfight and Dan Aykroyd tank shenanigans. This is a long sequence.
Yeah, this is the sequence that Spielberg was most excited for, though, right? He's in the back lot of Hollywood Studios, and he set up a chance for a bunch of bad green screen.
When Belushi's in his plane, it's not strong.
Yes, a bunch of bad green screen, some weird like sexual comedy of them kind of still trying to while they're trying to get shut down. They even use her bra to keep it in almost autopilot as they're getting chased. I actually thought that was...
that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I thought that was whoever did the set design on that or the costuming there, or that was kind of smart as they're trying to do that. The one thing, or one of the things I did find I liked about this was the costuming and light and set design. Like, they're making a pretty cool space here that this huge, like, silliness is happening in.
The Hollywood Boulevard scene, very much so. And the costumes are all, like, period appropriate, I'm sure.
And that's all
from what I've seen of
it seems to work pretty well. But you're right, this is really long, this entire stretch. And the worst part about this whole stretch is something we alluded to earlier, and I want you to speak about a little bit, is the whole Stretch versus Wally, and Stretch chasing down Betty, trying to get physical with her. Well, it's clear she's not interested in that.
Yeah, this is where that really kind of takes center stage as Tim Matheson's sex plane gets shot into the La Brea tar pits by Wild Bill Kelso. Then his plane gets shot down by that fucking ventriloquist on the Ferris wheel from earlier.
Yep.
And back on Hollywood Boulevard, Wally has successfully taken out the majority of the lights, neon signs, and marquees that Dan Aykroyd tasked him with destroying in the previous scene. When he sees them flying overhead, he's like, shouldn't there be like lights out in an air raid? So he's trying to shoot these things down. He gets fucking biffed on the head with something. I don't even remember what it was. And he's like unconscious, but before he passes out, he like tells Wally to like shoot the lights out, kid. So they're doing that. But before Wally can complete this mission, a familiar scream gets his attention, and he hops down from the tank to save Betty from Treat Williams, who at this point is pretty much in full-on rapist mode. Like, he's been chasing her around, grabbing her by the leg and shit. She's trying to get away from him. She's screaming, and he is not taking no for an answer.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
The same time this has happened, Betty's friend is still chasing and trying to get with him.
She's trying to do to Treat Williams. Treat was trying to get her lady.
Yeah.
Which, in a way, does it make it better or not really?
They're treating it like it's funny, though. Like, which is...
They're treating it like it's funny? Is it making a little pun there? Is that what
I don't think it's supposed to be fun, but they're definitely acting as if this is funny there, and it clearly isn't. Of course, they're also just setting up Wally being able to come save the day here.
This is the George McFly balling up his fist in Back to the Future. Yeah, Tree's feeling pretty good about his chances, but Wally tells him,
No, I can't beat you in a fair fight. Stupid. I don't fight fair. Neither do I.
before kicking him in the dick and bitch slapping him with an ammo belt. And if this wasn't the point where everyone in the theater stood up and cheered, it definitely happens 2 minutes later when Wally gets back onto the tank, turns it around, and catches up to Betty, scooping her up for a triumphant kiss. I would have cheered myself, but then I realized there's still a half hour of movie left.
So this stretch is funny because it's definitely the part that Spielberg had the most fun making, right? It's a big, over-the-top, ridiculous setting. All kinds of stuff's going on with the planes flying, the tank, all the guns shooting and exploding things. There's light everywhere. We've got an unlikely hero besting, like the brutish guy over here. We have a plane crashing and a woman like exploding and coming at the same time as that happens, right?
Yeah.
Like they come out of the plane and she's just covered in goo and we're not sure what that goo is.
Tim Matheson's exploring her tar pits right now.
Exactly. Like you said, Belushi goes down too. He crashes in the middle of this tank
fuck.
scene.
Yeah, exactly where everything else has been happening, right? Like, what a coincidence. It's fine. He's happy to be alive, but even happier when he spots General Stillwell and gets to proudly report that he, Captain Wild Bill Kelso, is the first pilot to shoot down a Japanese plane on American soil. Now, because of the whole unhinged cokehead vibe he's got going, the general is, let's say, skeptical, but then Belushi hits him with this.
Well, the plane's not important, sir. What's important is the submarine. The sub!
Shut down a sub, too.
No, sir. I could have, though. I had him in my sights. I had that bastard right where I wanted him. And I caught it in the radiator. He's still out there!
So that's where we're headed next. But my question is, will there be anything left of this sub when Betty's dad gets through with it?
Oh my goodness. This sort of many screw loose father who was about to kill Wally for wanting to dance with his daughter is happy to have a giant military I don't know what you'd call it, like gun on his front lawn that shoots off huge ordnance at this sub. So he decides it's time for them to defend America from the Japanese. They wheel the gun into a spot where they can take out the sub, but of course he doesn't align it so it doesn't shoot through his home. He decides to leave it in a space where he has a giant object, his house, in between him and the sub. And we get a lot of this really bad destruction comedy coming up here. A lot of bad comedy with his wife and her character as well.
Yeah, she is for some reason unaware that the gun is pointing right at her face in the center of their house. She's looking at it out a window, and this other guy, the guy who runs the amusement park, yes, has to like kind of tell her to move. This guy was an odd duck, I thought. Didn't talk much. A lot of his comedy was like deadpan.
He just had a pipe. That guy, yeah. It's strange.
I liked him.
Old timey character.
I don't know.
I
did enjoy him. Yeah,
okay.
I did. I really did. But yes, I asked earlier if there would be anything left of the sub when Betty's dad's done. There definitely will be, as the only thing this guy managed to hit is his own house, like you mentioned repeatedly. Meanwhile, Wally directs the tank through a paint factory, and Wild Bill Kelso picks up Treat Williams and his ample lady friend, but then detaches them from a sidecar on this motorcycle he's driving, which sends them smashing into a truck carrying eggs, which is funny to see because Treat Williams' character hates eggs. That's pretty much the vibe of this right now. This is the smash a bunch of shit up section of the movie, and it continues as the amusement park as the Japanese sub fires on it multiple times because those guys in the Ferris wheel blowing up buildings and eventually sending that Ferris wheel into the ocean. But don't worry, everyone, the ventriloquist dummy survives. Thank God. This is a tough.
This is like a 10-minute section too. You just got through all of that in about 30 seconds, and I'm glad you did because it's dragging really bad.
Yeah.
The paint factory.
Completely unnecessary.
Did they he always wanted to do this? Like, they literally drove a tank through vats of paint, just spraying color everywhere. And I just think someone thought it would be fun. We're going to make the biggest fucking mess we could ever make. And they did.
It's a good way of describing this movie.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
The biggest fucking mess there.
That's it.
So they get the tank down to the waterfront.
Everyone converges on the side of the amusement park at this point, with Wally still commanding Dan Aykroyd's tank, taking some shots at the Japanese sub, but ending up in a very precarious position on the end of a dock. Wild Bill Kelso, meanwhile, goes for a more direct approach, driving his motorcycle into the ocean and swimming his way out to the sub to try and storm it himself. And after the sub blows up the dock, thus dumping Wally, Dan Aykroyd, and the rest of the completely wasted acting talent on board into the ocean, they submerge to return home to Japan, content that they have struck a mighty blow for the land of the rising sun. But they'll be carrying a little extra weight on their trip back as Wild Bill Kelso manages to jump through a hatch and, after quickly realizing what a dumb idea this was, doing a complete 180 and surrendering.
All right, turn this cub around. You're taking me to Tokyo. Everybody got a light?
Did any of this seem like a good idea on paper?
The movie?
Yes.
I don't know. I think what felt like a good idea to them was let's get some people who are really successful right now and throw them all together, and it's got to make money, right?
Yeah, Spielberg, hot director, Belushi and Aykroyd, hot comedians.
Yeah,
there's
a lot of famous
America.
Actors. Yeah, exactly.
That's what happens. Someone gets a script, they take it, they get this star, they change the script to fit the stars, and you end up with
I want someone to blame for this. I need to
go to the IMDb and just start working your way down.
Bullshit. Just go take it and write a mean email to each of them. I hope that you did better work later that made reparations.
They all
for
did.
This. Yeah,
I'm sure they all. Well, not Belushi, really. This is kind of we're getting close to
the end.
Lights out for him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But getting back on track here, with all the Japanese gone and all the Americans safely back on land, all that's left to do is try to put the pieces back together, which is what we get in our next scene. General Stillwell arrives at Betty's dad's house, where he finds pretty much everybody. They're all a bit worse for wear, and at least 2 of them have been arrested by the military police. But it's Betty's dad's house that suffers the movie's final blow. Dad makes an impassioned speech about Americans coming together before nailing a wreath to his door to commemorate America and the spirit of Christmas. It's a nice gesture, but it causes the entire house to slide over the edge of a cliff, giving us one last explosion. And after Robert Stack's end line of,
"It's gonna be a long war,"
we finally mercifully hit the credits. Wow.
Yeah.
What a journey this has been.
We didn't even mention some stuff like Aykroyd's character hitting his head and then like turning into like an incredibly incompetent and incoherent person.
Yeah, at one point he's using lemons as like bug eyes underneath a pair of pantyhose he has in his head or something.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
just he goes manic also, which is my least favorite Dan
John
Aykroyd.
Candy is in this. And
complete waste of talent. Mickey Rourke there, waste
absolutely
talent.
wasted moments. Yeah, there's just so many spots in this that it could have been promising. They had all of the talent in the world, and it turned into, I don't know, because of lack of writing, lack of direction,
lack of somebody to rein it in, like you said.
Where
was the
giant
adult voice in the room saying, Steven, go to your room, Steven.
Yes, exactly. That
go
is
to your
what was
room.
necessary.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, that I don't know, man. Yeah, that's it, and I'm glad it's over. I was so glad it was over.
At least we got a John Williams theme at the end. That was something.
Was that John Williams?
Yeah,
kind of like a big band kind of America fanfare.
It was, but John
thing.
Williams like organized it all. He did the music for this.
Spielberg's just like, you owe me a favor, John.
Yeah, John. I wonder if we asked John Williams which movie he is most embarrassed to be a part of, if this would make the top 5.
He doesn't give a fuck. He'd be counting his money, just laughing.
Well, yeah, he's just adding another.
Oh, Steven. You've stepped in it this time. No, let's move into our ratings here, because at this point, I don't want to spend any more time talking about this, honestly. It's what a mess. So the way we always do this, we rate the movie on a scale of 1 to 10 2 times. 1 to 10 for how bad it is, 1 to 10 for how enjoyable. And the goal is to find movies that are a 10 out of 10 on both scales, or what we call the Crit 20. My first instinct was to give this a 10 just because of how completely misguided and untethered it was. But if I'm being totally objective, there is some good work here done with like locations, costumes, set design. There's a high level of production value here. Producer John's fucking yelling at me right now because he hates
really
when I,
mad at
he
you,
hates
yeah.
when I
Mad at
let
you.
movies off the hook because of this. But like, there is enough movie making craft here that I'm only going to give this a 9, because while there is so much wrong with this, the wasted acting talent, the scenes that are too long and too indulgent, just bad comedy in what is supposed to be a comedy. This is what happens when you have someone who's not like naturally comedic, like Steven Spielberg, and you're like, go make a funny movie. You can't just fucking send someone who's not funny to do something funny. This is what you get. This is what you get when it happens and when nobody says no. So I have it as a 9. I would give it a 10, but there is enough here in terms of technical production that I'm going to not go for the full 10. How about yourself?
This is a 10 bad.
Okay.
To take the concept of what was happening on the west coast of America after they were hit by Pearl Harbor and turn it into a comedy and make it like 1940s slapsticky is just ridiculous. The stereotypes that are portrayed in it about the Japanese, the Germans, the Americans, the hits,
we knew you weren't going to
white
like
people,
that.
the black people, the everyone is really bad. The mood and tone is really strange.
Yep.
Right. The acting is bad, but that's mostly because the writing. I think the writing is terrible, which leads to a bunch of performances that don't sort of pull it off. The comedy is not funny.
Yeah.
I laughed maybe once or twice in a 2-hour period, and it was more at the ineptitude at the filmmaking than at the attempts at comedy.
There's a great point. Too long also.
Really long.
Comedy should not be 2 hours long.
Yeah.
That like at 90 minutes or less. And this was that you couldn't, there wasn't enough laughs in this giant amount of time.
Even with John Williams on the soundtrack, I got to give this a 10 bad.
Wow. All right. But how enjoyable did you find this on a scale of 1 to 10? This is going to be a low number.
Yeah. I thought that there were some effects that were like well done. Like you said, there's craft, right? The explosions and effects are well done. They didn't shoot and blow up any cars. The music, of course, worked well. I liked the costuming and some of the spectacle that was there. I thought the long game on the plane sex was like commendable to stay with. You like,
wow, that's not how I thought you were going to go at all with that. Okay.
I'm glad that they stuck to their guns and didn't give up on it if we're going to go there, but it wasn't funny necessarily. So I think it's a 4.
Okay. So you're actually higher than I am for this.
Yeah. You're lower than that, huh?
Yeah. I have this as a 2.
Okay.
I found myself constantly checking the clock to be like how much this is left and just being disappointed. Just, not enough laughs. This is supposed to be a comedy. It's 2 hours long almost, like hour 54 or something like that. not funny, just not funny for long stretches. And so, like, I feel like you just failed at whatever your mission was, unless your mission was blow a bunch of shit up. But I will say, the opening scene, which apparently, like, in, like, test screenings, the audience was, like, super into the movie at this point because, like, again, it plays into popular stuff. It is a clever idea.
Yeah.
But then it's just downhill. It's just downhill from there. But the opening scene's enough for me to get it, like, at least a little something.
So you're calling this the Spielberg premature ejaculation. It was good for like 30 seconds at the start, and then it was all done after
way
that.
too early. And then he kept trying he was trying to mash his
For like 2 hours. Yeah, it was
dick into
like, it just wouldn't work.
It's like Tim Matheson in that plane.
Yeah.
It's just nothing's happening. No, man. So yeah, I did not enjoy it. Maybe it's because it's also my second viewing, so the curiosity factor even wasn't there for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, this is not a good movie. I had way more fun talking about this than I did watching it, which is
that's fair.
I guess that's in a way kind of the goal of what we're doing here, but it's not a good sign for the movie itself that it was such a gap between that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go as high as a 4. I don't know how the fuck you got to a 4. I couldn't tell you 4 things I liked about this movie. But
that's fair. I think it's one of those things where I didn't have a lot of expectation.
Yeah.
So if I had high expectations and it was as shitty as it would have been like a 1 or a 2, right?
If you were a paying customer.
Yeah.
Oh, Spielberg coming up, whatever. Oh, Aykroyd and Belushi.
This is going to be amazing. I know it's, and then it was this piece of shit.
Yeah.
Then it would have been a 1 or 2. But because it was just bad and I didn't like care or have thoughts about it before, that's I think maybe why I landed on that 4.
Well, fair enough. How'd you feel about this beer though?
I think this is a like very. You get what you think you're going to get beer, right?
It's
like
the exact opposite of this movie.
Exactly. It met my expectations of what a good British ale is going to taste like. It was very malty, very golden in color. I wouldn't say it's a style that I go to frequently now. It's definitely a more classic style of ale.
Well, malty's not really your thing.
It's not really my favorite, but it was a good way to enjoy a beer while we talked about this movie, and it was a reasonable connection.
Yeah, I think sort of to your point, it's not promising anything spectacular, nor is it delivering anything spectacular. I would categorize this as like a reliable beer. It's just your classic British ale taste, and if that is what you are in the mood for, this will 100% satisfy that mood.
Yeah.
Unlike this movie, this Bombardier did hit the target. It is delivering its payload in the way you would expect. So this is a style that I enjoy. If I was in a pub somewhere, I could see myself cashing like 3-4 of these in the course of an evening.
Yeah.
And I have had it before, will have it again. Good stuff.
I do wish I had some bangers and mash to eat alongside it right
now.
But,
always welcome for sure. Speaking of things that are always welcome, 2 weeks from today, we're going to be spending some time with an old friend of ours. Wes Craven is going to be featured on our podcast 2 weeks from now. Wes Craven movie from the 90s. You ever seen Shocker?
No, I thought for a second you said Wes Craven was going to join us. I was like, holy shit, how did we get that?
Dead?
Probably. But we have summoned him from the grave. We are going to have a seance on our next episode, and we're going to be doing the Shocker.
Not the Shocker.
It has anything to do with the thing you do with your hand sometimes.
I honestly can't remember if that plays a part in the plot of this. I'm going to say no, probably. No, it's about a guy who, like a serial killer, gets put to death, and he's electrocuted when he doesn't die, and he gets turned into some like being of electricity.
Oh, okay.
So he's gonna be.
We've watched movies where people in electricity and special powers have come into force in this podcast before.
I don't know.
We're gonna make some connections after watching.
He's gonna be kind of. I think he like jumps from like body to body. They're like Friday the 13th. Jason Goes to Hell.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But with electricity.
Yeah, that's true.
So Wes Craven. I don't know. Little horror movie. It's a cult favorite of some people.
It feels like been a while since we've done horror.
I mean, Hard Rock Zombies had horror elements.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it was not. I wouldn't take it seriously. Yeah. Although we'll see how seriously you take Shocker. Your mileage may vary on that. But it's Wes Craven. We've had some Wes Craven success before. So.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch that together.
Definitely. Well, make sure you come back in 2 weeks' time for that. But before then, if you haven't already, please follow us on social media at the BMB Podcast on X and Instagram.
You changed from Twitter, huh? You just had to do it now?
Maybe.
Are you caving to Elon?
No, you're right. Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you.
Find us there.
If you want to send us an email at thebmbpodcast@gmail.com.
Definitely. We're winding down season 5 and probably don't have time for any more requests to sneak in here. But, we always appreciate feedback. And if you want to send us some ideas for the future, go ahead, do it. But thank you so much for joining us today for 1941. I had a hard time saying it with a straight face.
Yeah, that's fair.
We hope you'll join us in 2 weeks' time for Shocker. Until then, I'm Cooper.
And I'm Nolan.
And we'll see you next time on Bad Movies and Beer.
Keep soaking it from the clouds.
A comedy spectacular.